Nancy Mace gets asked as a Trump supporter to appear on ABC's Sunday show This Week with George Stephanopolous. I texted back and forth with Nancy about this. She was invited to come on as basically a Trump surrogate. Hey, we want to bring up, we're going to have a Biden person as they always do. Actually, they probably have 10 Biden people. And then we want to have a Trump person on to talk about, okay. And she says, sure, I'll go on. Trump just won the South Carolina primary. She was supportive of him in South Carolina. He just endorsed her. Okay. So she says yes. So she gets on, she goes on the show. Nancy Mace, by the way, in 2019, when she was in the South Carolina legislature, told a very personal story about how she had been raped. Because during a bill on exceptions for in a pro-life piece of legislation, she was making the case for rape. She didn't think enough lawmakers understood the trauma that women faced, the consequences of rape, etc., and wanted them to hear her personal story. So she told it on the floor of the South Carolina legislature and explained to them how difficult it is for women to come forward and tell their story because it's so difficult to be believed. It's so often that they are shamed. It took a tremendous act of courage to do that. So here's how George Stephanopolous went with that on his show. Let's play the clip.
This morning, you've endorsed Donald Trump for president. Judges and two separate juries have found him liable for rape and for defaming the victim of that rape. How do you square your endorsement of Donald Trump with the testimony we just saw?
Well, I will tell you, I was raped at the age of 16. And any rape victim will tell you, I've lived for 30 years with an incredible amount of shame over being raped. I didn't come forward because of that judgment and shame that I felt. And it's a shame that you will never feel, George. And I'm not going to sit here on your show and be asked a question meant to shame me about another potential rape victim. I'm not gonna do that.
It's actually not about shaming you. It's a question about Donald
Trump. No, you are shaming me.
You've endorsed Donald Trump for president.
Right.
Donald Trump has been found liable for rape by a jury. Donald Trump has been found liable for defaming the victim of that rape by a jury. It's been affirmed by a judge.
It was not a criminal court case, number one. Number two, I live with shame. And you're asking me a question about my political choices, trying to shame me as a rape victim. And I find it disgusting. And quite frankly, E. Jean Carroll's comments when she did get the judgment, joking about what she was going to buy, it makes it harder for women to come forward when they make a mockery out of rape, when they joke about it.
Doesn't it make it harder for women to come forward when they...
It makes it harder when other women joke about it, and she's joked about it. I find it offensive. And I also find it offensive that you're trying to shame me with this question.
I'm not trying to shame you.
Are.
In fact,
I have dealt with this for 30 years. You know how hard it was to tell my story 5 years ago when they were doing a fetal heartbeat bill and there were no exceptions for rape, incest, or rape or incest in there? I had to tell my story because no other woman was coming forward. No rape victims were represented. And you're trying to shame me this morning.
I'm just asking.
And I find it offensive. And this is why women won't come forward.
Women won't come forward because they're defamed by those who perpetrate rape.
They are judged and they're shamed. And you're trying to shame me this morning. I think it's disgusting.
I'm not shaming you at all.
I've told my story. It took me 25 years to tell my story. I was judged for it. I still get judged for it today.
I'm asking you a very simple question.
You've heard the definition or the term mansplaining before. How dare George Stephanopolous? Women don't come forward because he's telling her why they don't come forward? What? I am blown away at the lack of coverage of this interview. They covered for him. He mansplained to her what it was like to be raped, why women don't come forward. You don't know, Nancy Mace. You, who came forward telling your tragic personal story about being raped at 16. You don't know. I'll tell you why women don't come forward. You just listen to me because I know why women don't come forward, not you, a woman who's been raped. Are you kidding me? Now, I have spent years prepping people for interviews, being interviewed. That was a masterclass, what Nancy Mace put on. Now, remember the context that I told you about the interview. She was asked to come on as a surrogate. Tell us why Trump's winning or losing or what you think of it. And he wanted to play that gotcha moment. Prior to that coming on, he played her in the South Carolina legislature coming forward. They made this entire segment about her personal rape story. That's why they had her on. But they didn't want to tell her that. They wanted to shock her and make her kind of, gotcha. That was their gotcha moment. You've been raped. He's been accused of rape. But you notice in the first part of George's thing that he says, a jury has found him guilty. She pointed this out. And I'm not undermining, believe me, I don't seek to undermine the charges, but it was a civil judgment. It's not a criminal court that was done that. And then he was found guilty of defaming her. Okay. Again, not minimizing any of these charges, but Stephanopolous is trying to make it seem like somehow Donald Trump, he did what they always try to get everyone else on. He wasn't honest about this. He made it seem like a jury has found him guilty. It was a civil, which is a very different legal standard that you find somebody guilty of in terms of the award they get, the dollars that they get. Nancy Mace explained that in that clip. Then she also explained why she had a problem with E. Jean Carroll's response, because she had been laughing about it. She had been talking about how she was going to spend all this money that Nancy Mace said probably makes it more difficult for other women to come forward because, gosh, she's mocking this experience that's so personal and tragic. It was mind-blowing to me because here's the thing. For Nancy Mace, she had to think of that all right there. And in Tide probably is dealing with a bunch of emotional stuff saying, I cannot believe that I'm being attacked again. After being able to come forward just a few years ago and finally tell this story, here is this jerk coming at me, trying to get me to, how can you dare support Donald Trump? And she explains it. Here's why I did it. Here's what I think of him. No, that's not good enough. You're a victim of rape. You must denounce him. That's why we're having you on. Didn't you know that? Unbelievable. The composure and the pushback that she exhibited there, as I said, was a masterclass because she couldn't have been prepared for that. That's not why they had her on. I frankly, like I said, I'd be going, oh my God, I can't believe you're making this about me and my personal thing. And, trying because that's what he wanted. He wanted her to say, gosh, as someone who personally went through this, I get it. That's why. He never does that to Democrats, does he? And let's face it. Now, again, as I said, I think she held a masterclass in showing how to take something like that on head on without having notes and be prepared. But let's face it, George. I thought you defended a man who had been seriously charged, accused of very similar things, hadn't he? Kathleen Willey, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then engaging in a sexual act within the Oval Office with an intern. And you want to judge somebody else? Are you kidding me? You were the guy who defended that. You were the guy who probably helped write talking points when Hillary Clinton went out and went after all those women. And you want to shame Nancy Mace? That's his old boss, okay? That's his old boss. That's who he is. So it would have, in retrospect, if you were ready to have that debate, go in and go, really, you want to ask for that question? Here's what you did as a person. Here's who you defended.